In this module, we're looking at different strategic business units, including cost center, revenue center, profit center, and investment center. And then we're looking at what tools management can use to control functions within those centers. And so you'll see that some tools can be used in different segments. And this is just a nice way to summarize some of the key tools that your chapters will discuss. Now there's going to be other tools that are used by management as well, but we're just going to highlight these based on some of the things that we're learning in the textbook. As you interview your managers in the various departments, you might discover that they use different tools. So it'll be interesting to compare and contrast with the list that we have here. Okay, so I first want to look at the strategic cost allocation, just to give you an example. And here's just a new example that you haven't seen. And it basically is going to look at two different resorts, Harbor and Crystal Coast. And they really have an issue because they're going to take this $3 million and try to allocate it between the two resorts. So the revenue is straightforward, and that can be directly allocated to each resort. But then it lists some other items that we might be able to use as cost drivers. So it tells you, what's the difference in square footage between the two resorts? What are the number of rooms? How does that vary? Assets, how does that vary? And how does revenue per room vary? So looking at that $3 million, we can look at our questions down below. What if we divided it up based on revenue? So if we took the $3 million and said, let's just allocate it between the two resorts based on the amount of revenue that each has. So if it has more revenue, it's going to get more of the cost. So in this block here, what I did was I highlighted, or not highlighted, but I basically calculated the percentage based on the total. So revenue is 35% out of the total for Harbor and 65% out of the total for Crystal. And then I also took the other drivers and just divvied it up so we could see what's the percentage for each of those based on the total. So if we use just revenue, so that would just be this top line. So we basically say take 35% of the 3 million and allocate it to Harbor because that's how much in revenue it had out of the total, and put the rest 65% over to Crystal. That's what this schedule does here, is summarizes it, taking just the revenue and then allocating the costs appropriately. So for example, this 1,050,000 is just 35% of the total of 3 million. See if we can get back. Okay. And so then your profits are shown here. It's just revenue minus cost. Now part 2 says, why don't you use ABC instead? Why don't we use ABC to allocate that $3 million? So more of a refined approach. So if you were to add this up, this is that $3 million, but it's just put into different buckets. So this 200,000 is thought to be driven by revenue. This 100,000 is thought to be driven by square footage. The 600,000 is thought to be driven by rooms, and the 2.1 million is thought to be driven by assets. So these are the drivers that are thought to drive these costs. Now there's not any perfect answer for this. It's just going to be based on possibly regression analysis went into this to figure out, what's the best driver for each of those buckets. It could just be based on management's knowledge of how those costs function. So just allocating each of the buckets then based on the percentages. So I already calculated the percentages up here, so just allocating each of those buckets based on the appropriate driver, we just divvy up those costs. So the costs get divvied up a little bit differently than what we did over here. And so in this table, I'll show you what it looks like. So you've got the same top line for revenue, but then just basically bringing all of these costs over into this bucket, we can see that the bottom line is going to be different. So Crystal looks better up here than it does down here. Harbor looks worse up here than it does down here. And so, what's the right answer? I mean, what's the best way to allocate these costs? Like I said, there's no perfect way to do this, but this we would consider to be a more refined approach. There's a lot of, it's just based on one assumption up here and assuming everything reacts the same way. But this is a more refined way to look at these costs. And you've got a powerful tool here because you can figure out if I want to reduce cost at Harbor, I can look at my 4 different cost drivers and try to adjust those to make me more profitable. So when we're trying to make decisions, using ABC can give us more information to make better decisions. Now this type of analysis is basically the premise behind the customer profitability that you did last module and module 2 for the case. Same kind of concept. And also you're going to do one homework problem this week where you'll apply this ABC costing. Now the problem that you do this week, they don't match up the driver with the cost buckets. They ask you to do that. So you're going to be given these buckets and you're going to look at some options for cost drivers and you're going to match up those based on what you think is the best driver.